Magic is found in every room, where people connect over a shared purpose. Luke, Hannah and Chris explore the role of purpose, courage, mindset and culture in every leader's quest for transformational performance.
Hello and welcome to Magic in the Room. I am Hannah Broderud.
And I'm Chris Province.
And I am Luke Freeman, and we are super excited to be back for season 5 of the podcast. I'm excited. Are you guys excited?
Yeah.
Pretty stoked.
5 seasons. That's crazy. Who knew?
A lot of talking at a table together.
It's a lot of words.
Yeah.
A lot of words.
But I've learned a lot over the last 4 seasons, and I'm super excited about what I'm going to learn from you two in season 5. And I think we're going to have some great conversations. And just for listeners, some context, in our last season, season 4, we started diving deep into leadership. Now, previously on the podcast, we had talked about all sorts of things about organizational culture and what's the psychology of leadership, lots of interviews with leaders who have been effective out there. But last season was really like, what do we believe about the core? Like, what is leadership? And at its core, we really dug into, we believe that it's noticing something that could be better in the world, making a conscious choice on what we do about that, like what are our options, and then having the courage to actually act and follow through and make something better. That's all leadership is.
And the key differentiator there is intentionality, right?
Yeah.
Because, we could talk, leadership could be a lot of things, but we like to think of it as an intentional act of noticing, choosing, and acting.
Yeah. Some have said leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. I'm a little greedy, right? I think we as a team are a little greedy, so we want better than that. So intentional leadership is what we're going for, like level of intentionality in the influence that we're exerting. So last season, we talked a lot about how do we lead ourselves? How do we incorporate those ideas about leadership into daily life? Season 5 is going to be all about that next step on the leadership journey, which is when we get in a space where we have some sort of positional leadership role. So we have followers. We have a team that we lead at work. Maybe we're a leader in a civic organization or a leader in our family. How do we take these ideas of intentionally noticing something that could be better, making a conscious choice to do it, and then the courage to act and apply that in a team setting where we're the leader? It comes down to us. And so that's what this season's going to be about. Every episode, we're going to have a download guide that you as the listener can check out, can look at. It will be a reflection guide to really apply what you hear on the episode. And today we've got a great download. It's going to be around leadership transitions, transitioning from leading yourself to leading a team, really from that individual contributor role to some sort of positional leadership. And so as we talk about that today, we've got some visuals that I think can be really helpful in that download. So with that, let's jump into it. And and the download can be found at magicintheroom.com.
Yeah, when I'm thinking about the kind of leadership journey, going from, leading myself to, in a position of leading teams, it's not as if we forget how to lead ourselves or that's not still a requirement. It's a very layered approach. We should have, once we are aware, we're self-aware, we know our strengths, we know maybe our blind spots, and we've mitigated some of those. We know why we tend to make the decisions that we do, and we understand how to meet people where they are. It's keeping those things and then, having a group of followers that can activate an idea, a belief, a purpose, run a project, just being able to make things happen with other people, because that's really the story of life, right? We can't do anything by ourselves. Yeah. I don't know many people who have done anything of significance that have done it on their own. It all requires leadership. But I think there's, my first question for you guys is, as we move into positions where we're required to formally lead, there's just mindsets and assumptions that have to shift. So, Hannah, can you kick us off and just maybe talk about some of the mindset shift that has to take place as we move from this space of just leading ourselves to leading a team of individuals?
Yeah. And I love how you kind of set that up, Chris, because it's not as like we forget. At least we shouldn't forget. I do think there are some leaders that do. But yeah, always keeping this layer in mind that I am first responsible for leading myself. And in order to lead others well, I have to have excellent self-leadership. And that's where it starts, with building that self-awareness of my own internal processes and emotional states and how those affect other people. And so as we kind of move through this transition, I'm an individual contributor. What I'm evaluated on primarily is my personal output, right? My personal production, the tasks that I complete, the effectiveness of my own work, right? And then as we move into leading a team, the mindset shift is my value, or how I'm evaluated, does not come from my personal production as much as the effectiveness of the team that I lead. And we see, especially newer leaders struggle with this a lot, because my whole career, it's been about, what can I do? I'm the answer person. I'm the go-to person. I'm the problem solver. I have the solutions. And it's tempting to keep doing that, right? Because doing a job is a different skill set than leading someone who's doing that job. And that's really that mindset shift. And it requires a lot of letting go of the things that I've been conditioned to believe are part of success, to now recognize my success is how successful these people are. So how do I create problem solvers rather than solve problems? How do I help, support, coach, mentor those who are doing this job so that they can have their own insight, and I can spark reflection for them so they can expand their effectiveness and influence?
And it goes beyond just what people have been taught their entire career. I mean, at least in the US, all of our formal education, all of our, from the time we get shipped off to kindergarten, a lot of how we are measured is our individual outputs. Do I know my letters and my numbers? And I look at my kids' school today. I have 3 teenagers, and the amount of times they have to do a group project, I mean, let's just call it 5% of how they're measured is based on how they work with a group and how they can muster a team. And so we're really, even if we have, let's say, a 25-year-old who's starting in a new supervisor position, we really are, it's like 20 years worth of unlearning what gives them value, what defines performance. And I can't overstate that. And I've tried to gloss past it in the past and just say, hey, well, now you've got to really think about your team's outputs more than your own. And how do you get, but it is like, no, we got to go back and coach over and over and over again and really reinforce for folks making this transition. How is this different? And how do you grapple with the feelings of uncomfortableness inside you? Like, well, I didn't do anything today.
Yeah.
How am I getting paid? Like, that's a big problem to solve, that we have a voice that's telling us that.
Yeah. Or, as I'm sure everyone who worked on a school project, because you are told at some point in school that you have to work with a group. And for many of us, that's really uncomfortable, because it's like, no, but either I have to do all the work or it's not going to be done well, right? If you are the kind of person who took some pride in, what you were able to accomplish. And so, but they don't teach you the skill of how to collaborate with a team to get a greater outcome. Because it is true that typically the output of a team is higher than what any individual contributor could produce. But until you recognize that and learn how to collaborate effectively, you're not going to have that outcome, right? So you have a lot of people who are frustrated because they're like, either they choose to just take on and do it, and their team is great because they got to be the hero and do all the work. Or they're just really frustrated and angry that there are social loafers on the team who are not contributing and we're not doing a good job in engaging them and involving them. And we see these things happening in school. We've experienced them, and we see it reflected in the workplace.
Sure. And you see, not only are we conditioned that way in education, it's where social focus goes as well, right? So social focus goes to a person, a Jeff Bezos, a Tim Cook, and someone else who should remain nameless. It's not about the product engineering team at Apple.
Right.
Like, we don't celebrate them, although we touch their products every day.
Right.
So, I think it gives us a label, right? And I think that's why it's helpful, is we can understand the company through one person a lot easier than we can through 40. But it's also, it creates really a false presentation.
Right.
It's like Tim Cook didn't do the things. Tim Cook allows people the space and provides an environment where those things can happen. And has an impressive legal team to make sure that they leverage IP appropriately, right? Maybe the legal team should be the star of that show. But so it's not just in school. It's what media and society celebrates. I guess what is true is that we can wrap a lot of our identity around what I accomplish. I think it's more difficult to forge an identity around what other people do as followers.
Yeah.
So it's something else we have to work against.
Yeah.
It goes back to what Hannah was saying about these build on each other. So when we go from an individual contributor to leading a team, paradoxically, we can't stop the practices of leading ourselves. Actually, we have to double down on them, right? Because the internal work required and the self-leadership required to navigate this is immense. And if I'm going to say, you know what, there's something in my ego, the culture, the psyche of the organization, whatever, that really values it when I do a beautiful report and turn it in on time, or when I create a really great thing with my hands and it goes out onto, the facility. And like, I have to do a lot of work to say, I don't need that dopamine anymore. I don't need that feedback anymore. I don't need people to be like, oh, look what Luke did. It's okay. And actually, it's a sign that I'm winning if people say, oh, that, let's call him Tim, right? Tim did awesome. Oh my gosh, look what he built. Look at this report he created. Man, this was so insightful. Well, if I'm Tim's leader, that is a win for me. But getting there and feeling like that's a win for me is, there's a lot of work required.
And there's a key to what you just said. You said you have to figure out that you don't need that dopamine anymore. Actually, you do. You definitely need the dopamine, and you have to figure out that you can get it from repeating the action of allowing somebody else to shine and to succeed. And when you get reconditioned for that, then that becomes natural. That's really what dopamine does. It doesn't actually give you any pleasure, but it does make you repeat behavior that leads to pleasure. And that's what the brain is looking for, right? So when you derive joy from seeing others succeed, then...
But practically help me with this. Used to, I was the, floor kind of leader with everyone that made cabinets, and I made awesome cabinets, and I modeled the way, and the rest of the team followed the way that I put the cabinets together and the craftsmanship that I put into it. And now my job is to support and coach and make sure the team is resourced with material and time, and that we meet our production quotas. But I'm not making the cabinets anymore. Like, how do I not feel somewhat irrelevant? I'm not doing the thing that I was really good at.
Yeah. Well, that is the mindset shift. And change can be painful. It can be hard. But all change starts with a choice. And until and unless we make that decision that I am going to shift where I get my satisfaction of a job well done from the cabinets that I make to watching excellent cabinets being made by the people that I trained and supported, like that shift has to happen.
Well, and so Luke, what happens if I take that leadership position and I hold on to this idea that the only way that I am relevant is if I make cabinets? How is that harmful?
I think it's harmful if you are in a position of leadership, right? So you move into that position of leadership and you can't make the value shift. You can't make the mindset shift. But at the same time, you're like, well, I mean, I'm not going backwards. And maybe there's no one around you willing to say, hey, I don't think the fit is great. Well, then I think we've all experienced situations where we've had a supervisor, a manager, who isn't accessible to us, who doesn't coach us, who does 80% production work and just the bare minimum of whatever administrative things they have to do, form they have to fill out, whatever. Like, that's not a positive experience for anyone else. So I think it's an act of selfishness to some degree to accept that role or stay in that role if what you really want and what you say is most important to me is doing the production work. And if that's most important, like, move back into it, stay there, because you're going to be a governor, you're going to be a limiter on the effectiveness of that team if you are unwilling to spend more of your time on leadership, coaching, collaboration with other departments, all the things that a leader does. If you're not willing to spend time on that, your team is not ever going to succeed to the level they could.
Yeah. And I think there's alternatives too, right?
Yes.
So if I'm a craftsman or an artist or somebody who gets great pleasure and satisfaction from either making things with my hands or creating and building, right? Whatever dimension we want to look at that, could be writing code. It could be whatever it is. That's your trade, your craft, your art. You can still do that in other forums, right? Now, I'm leading this team here at work to do that, but having a creative outlet and having hobbies and other interests outside of work not only makes you a better leader, it helps, stimulate your brain to have better ideas and to collaborate better because you have outside things that you can bring to the team, right? So I don't think it's bad to keep up with doing the thing that you love to do, as long as you recognize that here in this role, and we've talked about role exploration and how we play multiple roles in life. When I have the role of leading this team, making cabinets or doing the thing isn't my role, but I can do that in other arenas.
But I'm here, like, as I enter this leadership space and take on the responsibility for leading a team instead of producing alongside them. Well, guess what? Like, I was really good at building the cabinets, and I'm probably not a very good leader.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about that shift for a minute. Right.
Well,
going from a space where I know how to do the things to a space where I probably don't know how to do the things.
Now I'm a beginner again.
Yes.
So,
I mean, we've said this on the podcast before. Just a reminder, like, positional leadership is abundant in the world. There are plenty of supervisors out there, plenty of managers, plenty of leaders of companies. Like, that exists. Plenty of teachers, plenty of coaches, plenty of folks who have authority over others.
And plenty of people who got promoted to the...
Well, that's the second half of it,
Yeah.
is that leadership that is focused on the follower's success and on something other than that leader's ego, doing it a certain way, focusing on the technicals instead of transformation for people is scarce. So positional leadership is abundant. And people that we would think of as transformational leaders, the best leader we can all think of in our lives who was a mentor to us and changed the way we think about leadership, is incredibly scarce. So when people are making this transition, they are experiencing that. Okay, yes, there's a leadership role. I got put into it. Well, guess what? In the world, there's a huge scarcity of effective transformational leaders. So if you're going to become that, like, it doesn't come from nowhere. It requires work. There's not 1,000 of these people out there for the picking.
So what are the activities then that I have to ramp up? What do I have to do more of once I'm into this space?
Yeah, and that's going to be the focus of this entire season of episodes. We're going to talk about those different skills. But the first one that we're going to talk about next month is about building trust. So it all starts with a foundation of trust. And all of these activities, all of these shifts, they are skills that can be learned. And that's the beautiful thing about leadership, that in and of itself is a mindset shift. It's not something you're born with. Yes, there are people who are born with natural talent in these different areas that make for effective leadership. And regardless of talent, when you work on building skill, you can still get better at this than you were. So you were an excellent cabinet maker. You have not had yet the training and experience to become an excellent leader, but you can if you choose to view it that way, that this is a skill that I can learn. In fact, there are multiple skills, and many of them are social skills in nature, right? People skills.
But I think it's a good illustration just in like letting people know, yeah, next month the topic is building trust. That's the skill when you're in a leadership role. Well, if I'm going to keep using the cabinet maker thing, like learning to do a mortise and tenon joint, if that's what I had to do the last 5 years, right? Learn how to do joinery and learn how to set up the saws correctly and learn, fit my pieces together. What clamps do I use? What glues do I use? What length of pocket screw do I need? Whatever, right? The exact same learning that has to happen that I learned for that technical job, what that looks like at this next step is I have to learn what trust is. How do we measure trust? How do I build trust? I think it's self-evident to all of us. That is a much more ambiguous, ethereal thing because we're moving from the realm of production of things or very clear finite services.
Or we could call them technical skills.
Right. To some sort of psychological construct in like how we get other people to perform.
Yeah.
Because we essentially are becoming experts at other people and the motivation and productivity of other human beings. And the technical manual for other human beings, like that's what we're doing this season.
Yep.
But it's not an easy topic.
And it's harder than rocket science because you can't just apply math and formulas. We say this all the time. You can call the technical skills the hard skills and the people skills the soft skills. But the soft stuff is the hard stuff. Like this is the hard work of leadership, is learning those human skills.
Well, let's kind of bring this, I guess, to a personal level, because we've all been in this space where we've transitioned from doing a something to leading people that do the something. And we've all gone through this transition, probably have our own bumps, bruises, and scars from it. But let's take a few minutes and just share, for the benefit of one another and the folks that dial in with us, like, what was your story? Like, what was kind of the breakthrough or the unlock that moved you from effectively leading yourself into a team environment? Like, was there some initial struggle and you found a path? Was it something that you dove into right away? What was your story making this first transition?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things for me. One is that I worked in a seasonal environment where I full-time professional position, but I had large groups of seasonal staff. So I had the chance to iterate and experiment with how I brought on and trained seasonal staff, how I shaped, defined leadership roles among those seasonal staff and coached those leaders to lead their peers, essentially. And I was able to iterate that, over whatever. I was able to do it 20 times. So that's part of my story. I did not do it well at the beginning. I mean, at the beginning, I was like trying to do all the things. Oh, let me go set up the room for this next meeting, and let me go write all the training manuals, and let me, I'm going to be the one that teaches all the skills during our staff training time. And so that's one piece, is that I was able to iterate a lot. In the last, let's call it the last 5 years, in the first, 5 years, I was way better at it than I was before. Now, at the same time, over years, I gained full-time staff that I supervised. And so a little bit different story, right? You jump into something that is a little bit longer lasting, and you have these long relationships, and you're kind of involved in a more longitudinal, what is performance and how do we do that together? And I will say, for me, I always feel the pull to getting things done and finding value in getting things done. Feel a lot of pride in getting things done. We did a team retreat this year and gave away some gifts as a part of it. And I did not go embroider the stuff, right? I did not go actually do the labor of creating these cool things that we gave to our team members. But I spent probably, let's call it 6 hours on like picking things out and working with the designer to get our logo updated to go on it, and then like making it kind of a sensory thing that people really felt excited when and like it made me feel really good to see people happy. So I'm pulled to those things. I like making people happy. I like people being like, "Oh, you're great," But what helps me get out of it are rhythms and habits to pull me away from what I can do and into what I need to do to help other people perform. And just like real simple, the biggest one for me, regular one-on-ones. So when I first started supervising a full-time team, me being committed to that habit consistently put in front of me problems to solve for other people to help them be successful. And if I had not taken on that habit, I would have been blind to a lot of what they needed, the tools they needed, the resources they needed, the coaching that they needed to be effective and efficient and high performance in their roles. So just by committing to it and putting it on our calendars and doing that week in, week out, it made me shift my focus because I want to make them happy too, right? And if they say I need this thing, and then I meet with them a week later and 2 weeks later and 3 weeks later, and I still haven't tried to get them the thing or help coach them through why they don't really need the thing, that's a failure, right? And so that helped me shift the game I was playing.
Yeah, super strong. This idea that a great leader must be a great communicator, and behavior follows structure.
Yep.
So if I can have the conversation, we're going to get the information flow, we're going to emerge the problems, and my focus isn't on making the cabinets.
Yeah.
So it's creating something, or the information that we're emerging will create the workflow and the service request and the things that I need to be doing as a leader if I listen in that space. Hannah, your story.
Yeah, so mine was, the biggest learning was that one size doesn't fit all. And recognizing that you have to be able to shift your style of leadership to match the individuals on your team. So I think when we move into leadership, we've had, team leadership, we've had experiences of great leaders and not so great leaders for us. And most of us have this desire that I want to be the kind of leader that I wish that I had, right? And so, yeah, we want to have the kind of leader that led us well, that recognized what we needed, right? And so we immediately start projecting that on everybody on our team. So for me, the greatest gift you can give me is lots and lots of autonomy and freedom to choose and make decisions and decide on the best course of action, or even just experiment and figure it out, because I will get there if you just tell me where we're going. And I take great joy in that discovery process of figuring out a way to do something. So that's the greatest gift you can give me. So that's the gift I gave to my team. And guess what? For the person on my team that was most like me, it worked really well. And he was very effective and thrived, right? And then I had 3 other people on my team, and a couple of them did okay because we had, really this connection. And then there was someone on my team very different from me. And I made so many mistakes. I made so many assumptions, and I had so many blind spots that, she was brilliant. She was very smart. I kept trying to do the thing that had helped me be successful. And she was frustrated, and we just could not really connect, because it wasn't until later, after the fact, in reflection, I recognized she kept asking for direction. She kept asking for clear direction. Like if she had an assignment, she was going to be the first one to get it done. It was going to be done excellently, but she wanted to know the steps. She wanted to have, things written out and spelled out very clearly, and she would just get after it and get it done, right? And I failed to provide that because it's not how I work, right? And so learning that, kind of the hard way in this case, because we were able to learn each other a little bit better, but I never fully mastered that skill with this particular individual, right? And I think we could have saved ourselves a lot of frustration if I had taken that learning sooner and recognized that, okay, she's going to do an awesome job as long as I am very clear. Clear is kind. And that's really, for me personally, that's also my word for this year is clear, clarity, clarify, and seek clarification. And that is one of the skills of effective leadership that we'll talk more about as well.
Yeah, I think my story of this transition was, working with the team. I come from more of a project and product management background. So, we ran the plays. We got the wins. The thing that I had held on to that came from my individual contributor days was this, carrying my own flag. Look what we did. Look what I did. Look, right? This flag carrying, this, if I'm noticed and the work that I'm leading is noticed, then maybe that paves a way for continued, increased responsibility within the organization. And carrying that flag never worked. I was just a guy walking around with a flag, saying, look what we did. Look how profitable this product is, or look how many people are on this platform, or whatever the case might have been. And we built really good stuff, always on time, always under budget. But sometimes there was a little bit of a wake of destruction. I don't know how many people on the team really wanted to work with us again after they supported our effort, because it was always going to be on time and it was always going to be under budget, right? Non-negotiables. But, it was really how we were getting there, and then I think carrying around a flag and celebrating a product that, however well performing it was, probably had some collateral damage, some social, and spent a lot of social capital. So it's just this idea of okay, carrying the flag ain't working. I'll just put the flag down. We'll do the work. Well, I didn't change anything about how we were going about the work. It's just put the flag down. Maybe other people will notice without me saying anything, right? Or carrying that flag. And that didn't work. Man, like I've been in middle management for like 8 years. Like I've carried my flag. I've not carried my flag. Just out of, just surrender at this point. I'm like, okay, I'm going to surrender. And I guess it's okay if I don't go anywhere. I want to help other people go there.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to take on my direct reports' condition as my own and celebrate and mourn with them, together, and lift them up to help them achieve. Because I know what they're doing. I'm technically good
Mm-hmm.
at the work that they're doing, and I think I can help them. And if I can help them get somewhere, then I'll just try that, because I can't get myself anywhere. And that was that breakthrough. Like the minute I started lifting other people up, like I didn't need a spotlight on me. Like the light that bounced off them somehow reflected to me. And that's really when the floodgates opened. And it wasn't intentional. Like my story was out of surrender. I'm not looking at this and saying, maybe I need to be a better leader. I mean, no one was having this conversation with me. It was just, okay, I give up on me, but I don't give up on you. So maybe I can help you. And through that, I learned like, wow, like that's where everything comes from. So kind of accidented myself into it. So, I mean, those are our stories for how we manage that transition. And hopefully those are helpful to folks. And maybe in those stories, there's some things where, we can all start making that lead yourself to leading a team transition. So let's get some final thoughts on this whole leadership journey.
Yeah, for me, the big takeaway is that somehow, ironically, leading ourselves to notice more about other people in our teams and really weigh our options about how we lead them, and then have the courage to try a different approach. That self-leadership is the key to being a leader of others. And if we're not willing to examine our own mindset, what gives us value, what gives us energy, it's going to be really hard to be successful.
Yeah, I think my final thought would be just how powerful it is to understand that as we go along this journey of increased responsibility, from leading ourselves to leading teams to leading and developing other leaders to leading organizations, the demand for our technical skills goes down every step on the ladder or through this journey. So by the time we're leading organizations, there's minimal technical skill required. Most of it is finance and general finance and people. Just embracing that and knowing how much of those technicals to retain, and where we guide our time, focus, and energy. That's one of those things that took me way too long to learn.
Well, I want to go back and say, embracing that, if it helps you, like embrace that paradox of we've got lots of positional leaders, but not very many leaders worth following. And so if we know there's a scarcity of leaders worth following, why would you not fill that void? The market is always going to want effective leaders worth following that help transform organizations and people's lives. There are not enough. There will not be enough anytime in the near future. So this work and embracing this work, it does come back to you, right? It does bring value back to you because you're filling a desperate need in the market.
Absolutely. Hannah?
Yeah, my key takeaway here is the skill of leadership is the skill of people. So becoming a student of human behavior, of how people operate, of social skills, that is the skill set to embrace. And yeah, keep up with your craft if you want to, and if that's valuable and meaningful, but shift your focus to studying how human connection works. And that's really, I think for me, like, the big takeaway from making this transition from self-leadership, continuing to lead yourself, to notice and to learn, but pay attention to how people work and learn how to speak their language and to create connection among people. I think that's a huge, huge key. So,
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for kind of this conversation around the leadership journey and this, I guess, first transition between leading ourselves and leading teams. And if, for our listeners, if you like what you heard, go check us out, purposeandperformancegroup.com. We're there on LinkedIn. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram. And hey, if you like what you hear, feel free to leave a review. If you don't like it, please don't. Smash whatever like button you got there. 5 stars only, right? Isn't that how we do surveys nowadays?
Apparently.
Is there any reason why you can't give us a 5 when my boss calls you? Yeah. No, but please drop a review and share that with us, please.
And I know we're getting ready to get read out, but I mean, I'm really excited about this season.
Yeah.
I think
me too.
Last season, it was really fun just to get to the bedrock of like, what is leadership? Like, and what does it take to be a good leader and to lead yourself well? And the stuff that we're going to be talking about, I mean, trust next month, it is just for us, because this is our job and we've been doing like every day of the week, we are talking with some sort of client about trust or about the things we're going to talk about this season. It can feel like, oh yeah, old hat, everyone knows this already, but just in preparing and thinking through, I think it's going to be really fun to get to the bedrocks of if someone's a new leader, like what does that take? What are the skills that they have to master? And excited to have those conversations with you guys. It'll be good.
Absolutely.
And I would just want to remind everybody to download the guide that goes along with this episode and also find the previous episodes of the podcast at magicintheroom.com. Magic in the Room is hosted by Chris Province, Hannah Broderud, and Luke Freeman. It's produced by Ben West. Social media management is by Emma Holland and Maggie King Robinson. Our theme music is by Evan Grimm. You can find his music on Apple Music. This episode was recorded live in person on site in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Magic in the Room is a production of Purpose and Performance Group. Find us at purposeandperformancegroup.com and previous episodes at magicintheroom.com.